Hello, I'm Cliff Robertson, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Hunters in the Sky, our documentary series about the fighter aces of World War II. This particular program deals with the clash between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, which began in the summer of 1941. Hitler had advocated the conquest of the USSR as early as 1924 in his book Mein Kampf. But by the late 1930s, it appeared that he had abandoned that dream. And in August of 1939, he signed a so-called non-aggression pact with Joseph Stalin. There was a certain amount of irony in this agreement, since it was actually designed to give each power the freedom to carry out aggressive policies against neighboring countries. The Soviets and Nazis had simply agreed that they wouldn't interfere with each other. But at some point, Hitler decided that he could no longer abide by that treaty. He felt that he needed what he called living space in the East, and so in June of 1941, he ordered an all-out invasion of Russia.
June 22nd, 1941. Operation Barbarossa. The German invasion of Russia begins. It is a surprise attack in violation of the non-aggression pact between Germany and the Soviet Union. Luftwaffe pilots are commanded to destroy the enemy on the ground and in the air. It is a quiet Sunday morning. The Russians are taken completely by surprise. Russia becomes a killing ground.
I will remember that day for the rest of my entire life. Beginning at 4:25 on the morning of the 22nd of June 1941, about 50 German bombers made strikes against our airfield. You can only imagine the kinds of horrors that took place on the airfield. That nightmarish hour is really very hard to imagine, even now, but I will try to tell you about it. There were fountains of earth, bombs exploding, oil exploding, the warehouses exploding, the planes were on fire. Then, by the afternoon, the pilots and the technical people started arriving. Many of them had their hair turned white from fear, and some of them even began to stutter from fear as well.
The Wehrmacht smashes towards Leningrad in the north, Stalingrad in the south, and the ultimate prize, Moscow. The Red Army is in full retreat. The Red Air Force is no match for superior Luftwaffe planes and pilots.
They were very gritty fighters in air combat, and a huge number of beginners, which always flew in large packs, and were of practically no consequence as opponents.
Colonel Johannes Steinhoff, Luftwaffe. On his 900th mission near war's end, he will survive the fiery crash of one of the world's first jet fighters. 176 kills.
I began to feel sorry for some of these guys. There was an incident where I was pursuing a low-flying MiG, and it tried to escape between some trees. And I thought, well, should I push the button? Because I really felt sorry for this miserable wretch. And then I did it. They were very brave. In the first day of the war with Russia, I saw bombing units who were down to the last plane, and the last bomber flew until he was shot down.
Major Erich Hartmann, Luftwaffe. The Russians call him the Black Devil. He will tally 352 confirmed kills and ranks as the world's top ace.
Polenkrieg war in 8 Tagen erledigt durch absolute Luftherrschaft.
Poland was finished in 8 days through air attacks. Then France was finished in 6 weeks through absolute mastery of the skies. Then Norway in 2.5 weeks, and then Russia. And in the first 3 months, we had an absolute mastery of the skies. As far as I was concerned, the Russians were finished.
In the first week, 4,000 Soviet planes are destroyed. The Red Army falls back. Hitler believes victory will be his by winter. The Russian giant is on its knees. Frantic, the Soviets move factories and build airfields far beyond the Ural Mountains, out of range of Luftwaffe bombers. New and better fighters roll off production lines. New pilots are hastily trained. In defense of the motherland, the Russians make a fierce stand at Moscow's gates. Incredibly, the German advance is stopped. Russia finds a powerful ally. Winter begins. It is a vicious, merciless onslaught of ice and snow. Adolf Galland, 4 times decorated by Hitler himself. He is the Luftwaffe's youngest general, 104 kills.
Der Winter zunächst mit
The winter and the mud was a tremendous obstacle. Then came the colds and the wind and the snow. And these were tasks for which the Luftwaffe was not at all prepared.
Ну, холодная погода, конечно.
You had to have special equipment in order to warm up the engines, to warm them up quickly. That, of course, was very hard.
Die großen Probleme, die für den Piloten geblieben sind.
And there were problems for the pilots too, like taking off and landing in deep snow, for instance. Today's pilots couldn't possibly imagine the conditions under which we had to fly. The mud, the snow, rocks.
It was also a bad winter for us, too. And anyway, who starts a war without knowing what weather conditions he's facing in that particular country?
As winter tightens its grip, Red Air Force pilots keep coming. They take a vow to fight to the last drop of blood and breath and to conquer, forward to victory.
We fighter pilots at that time, we didn't think about death. We only thought about defending our motherland, because that is the way we were brought up.
The fierce Russian resolve and brutal Russian winter take their toll. Hitler is forced to halt the advance on Moscow. The Russians stand ready as Hitler turns his eyes south to Stalingrad. July 1942, Operation Edelweiss. Hitler commits a huge field army against the Russians, pledged to stand firm or die. Stalingrad becomes a charnel house, block by block, house to house. Every foot of ground is paid for in blood.
Включая Сталинград.
Stalingrad, there were very few of us. We were always in the minority. It was hard, but somehow we shot down quite a few planes.
Over Stalingrad, the Red Air Force is reborn. America enters the war and launches a Lend-Lease policy that sends modern fighters to replace heavy Russian losses.
Die ganze Stalingrad-Armee, also die Russen.
When Lend-Lease came in, they got 40,000 trucks from America and 14,000 airplanes. And this is what Lend-Lease did. And this is what caused our downfall.
Suddenly, Luftwaffe dominance of the sky is no longer assured. German pilots must deal with a new breed of ground attack aircraft, like the Stormovik.
The Russians flew a combat bomber, which we called the cement bomber, or the IL-2 Stormovik, which was difficult to shoot down because it was an unusually heavily armored aircraft. The best way to bring it down was to either shoot up at the wings or the horizontal stabilizer by flying in as close as possible before firing. You had to know where to aim in order to bring it down. The dangerous aspect of the Stormovik consisted in the fact that it had a rear gunner.
Now the Soviets have potent weapons and use them with immense courage.
Я никогда не думал, чтобы у своих подчиненных поддерживать...
As a commander, I never thought about keeping up my subordinates' morale. The very situation itself, love for the motherland and of our people, that was enough. I never had to utter lofty, loud, or patriotic words, long live this or that or the other. I simply said, let's go, guys. And that was that.
With each month, the chances that this war could be reasonably concluded became less and less. We kept fighting, however, because it's unimaginable that a responsible German soldier would stop fighting when the fatherland continues to fight, when the fatherland bleeds. And even if they had every right, morally, they could not do it.
The German army is stalemated at Stalingrad. The battle will be fought through spring and summer and into the fall. The Germans dig in, braced for another winter. The Russians have other plans, a massive counterattack. November 18, 1942. 1 million Soviet soldiers, more than 1,000 planes, and 900 tanks are ready. The Red Air Force gives its best pilots the P-39 era Cobra, newly acquired from America.
At that time, the Cobra was an outstanding plane. There were 2 radio transmitters and 3 receivers, with 4 machine guns and a 37mm cannon. It was really a sheath of fire. If you got to within 75 to 100 feet of the enemy's plane and opened fire, the plane you were attacking would fall to pieces.
The massive Red Assault traps the German 6th Army at Stalingrad. It is a calamitous defeat.
Stalingrad is retrospect.
In retrospect, Stalingrad was a crime. This was a crime of bad leadership. How could they leave 320,000 soldiers to their fate without any pity? 180,000 were taken prisoner. Of those, only 5,000 came back home.
Hitler, livid and desperate, forces his generals to launch Operation Citadel, his plan to salvage the Russian campaign. Nothing will be spared. It will be a battle of titanic proportions. July 1943. Nearly 1 million men, 2,700 tanks, and nearly 2,000 Luftwaffe planes gather outside the city of Kursk. The Russians are warned by their spy ring, codenamed Lucy. When German Tiger and Panther tanks roll, the Russians are ready. Within a year, the Red Air Force has tripled in size. Major Vasily Kubarev, Red Air Force, wounded in the Battle of Kursk, he shoots down 10 Luftwaffe planes, 18 kills.
At the Battle of Kursk, I was leading 6 fighters, a group of 6 fighters. I was the lead man. We got into a fight with 50 German enemy planes.
flog ich mit meinem Rottenflieger und traf auf Russen.
We encountered some Russians, and we engaged them in battle. I shot down a Russian, and he went down in flames, and I was blinded by the fire. As a result, I couldn't see another Russian approaching.
As a result of that battle, we shot down 5 of the Ju-87 dive bombers and 2 of their fighters.
He shot my engine, so the propeller just revolved like a windmill, without any power. So I was coming down, and I wanted to crash in our territory, but it didn't go that way. The worst was to fly with the fear of being shot down over Russia. This in contrast to combat over England, where you'd also be taken into captivity. But in Russia, you were faced with a much worse fate. We were led to believe that pilots who were shot down over Russia were shot upon being captured.
At Kursk, walls of steel collide. Neither side contemplates defeat. The Soviets lose 1,800 tanks, but almost the entire German armored force, some 2,000 tanks, is destroyed in the greatest clash of armor in the war.
At that time, I spoke to the chief of the General Chiefs of Staff, General Jashonik, and the general told me that if the spring offensive would not be successful, then the war would be lost, and that it's better to end the war sooner than later. I had nothing with which to counter this argument. We felt that we had to do our duty to help those on the ground, and did our best to do so. We were like hunted rabbits, and tried to attack, and tried to save that which we could, but we'd known for some time that we couldn't win the war.
We had the advantage. The Germans, who before would engage any number of planes in the group in battle, wouldn't take on any formation of ours if they had less planes. If they had less planes, they would simply leave. We had already caught them.
We realized that the offensive had reached a standstill. We weren't getting any further. The Soviets were much stronger than we were led to believe by our high command. That's when we asked ourselves, how much further are we going to have to retreat? My memories of that time are overshadowed by the fact that it was impossible to even come close to fulfilling our orders. The question of motivation at this time should be seen as such. We had our more experienced colleagues who set an example and told us why we were there and what our duty was. This word duty was very important to us. But just a sense of duty is not enough. You have to convince yourself that what you're doing will ultimately be successful, and that what one did made sense.
Captain Arseny V. Vorozhikin, Red Air Force. He is one of the top Soviet fighter pilots with 52 kills.
Popular wisdom says that there are 3 features of human character which are tested and tried in only 3 cases. Friendship when you're in trouble, courage in battle, and wisdom in rage. Rage was boiling up inside of us. I felt helplessness, hatred. I wanted from the top to charge into that mass of German bombers. We still had the weapon of ramming them from the top with the bodies of our planes to do in yet another 3 bombers. The decision was taken. When we turned, the enemy met us with a rapid-fire, head-on attack. I aimed right at the leading plane, at the flag plane, hit him from the top with the propeller, and a speedy attack head-on, and then wait for the strike, for the blow. But there was no hit. Somehow, I didn't understand. I didn't hear the hit. I opened my eyes. There was sky. Why the sky? Where did that come from? I turned my head around, and everything became clear. Those huge, enormous, colossal planes had been unable, those multi-ton bombers had been unable to resist our offensive, our head-on attack. And like butterflies, they fluttered away through the skies, dumping the bombs on their own troops. In that battle, our nerves and our will towards victory turned out to be stronger than the steel of the Germans.
As winter approaches, it is clear that Hitler's Operation Citadel is a disaster. For the first time, the momentum of the German advance is halted. The Red Air Force controls the sky. What began as a turkey shoot for the Luftwaffe has turned into a struggle for survival.